Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to welcome you all again at Little Leaps. So thank you for taking the time to join us today, and I really value your presence here. And today we have a special guest. I'm so honored for her to be here once again, Susan Shea. She is a deeply experienced Montessori educator and consultant. She has over 30 years of dedication towards supporting children, parents, and educators around the globe. Isn't it, Susan?
Yes, I am that old, and I have I have spent all my working life, I guess, and my parenting life too, devoting my time to children. Yes.
Yeah. And you know what I admire most about you is your commitment uh, that is focused on finding the inner drive within every child. And that's most important, especially because many parents we see world over, especially a newborn, is considered as a child who doesn't know the world, doesn't understand the world, and not learning anything unless and until we intervene and we teach them. So we hardly give any credibility to their observation and absorption capability. So I love the fact that your topic today is about what this child wants to learn and what the child is seeking from this world to develop themselves. And this is why the topic for today is basic skills that every child wishes to develop. Um, I wouldn't go a lot more in detail about you, Susan. I would like to, share your experiences and knowledge with all our audiences today. But I would definitely, before let you speak, would like to congratulate you on the launch of your incredible initiative, the Small Hands Project. We are going to talk about it a little later once we are done with the topic. And what is interesting is that through this project, Susan is raising global awareness about the importance of practical life work, especially in communities where early childhood programs may not be accessible. So it is such a powerful reminder that small hands really can make a big difference. So over to you, Susan.
Well, thank you very much for that very lovely introduction, and thank you also for picking up on the title of this because I'll be referring to it directly later on. But yes, this is all about the fact that the child is already wanting this. This is not something that is adult centered. This is not something that we are going to do to help the child. We are going to do something, but it is in response to a desire that is already there. And that's I'm so happy that that was obvious to you from the title. I'd like to start, if I may, by referencing something that I'll admit it's not in my normal reading compendium, but I was looking at an article in a recent edition of a publication called Science Direct, and this edition was from last September. And I was interested to read about the work of an award winning physicist who is also a mechanical engineer. And I have very limited knowledge in these topics, but as I began to read this article, and I know that Maduri will post that link at some point in the comments so that you can enjoy it later also. As I was reading this, I also learned about him that he has engaged in research on design, on nature, evolution, and human development. And his name is Adrian Bijan. He's a Romanian American professor at Duke University in North Carolina in the US. And the article that I read is called The Physics of the Urge to Have Freedom. course, the title intrigued me because as a Montessori person, we know that freedom lies at the core of much of our work with children. The article discusses the connection between animal freedom and also the universal tendency towards easier movement and greater access in all evolutionary systems throughout nature. And there's a very intriguing part, which is a real life example, if you will, about when a human brings their pet for a walk. I have a dachshund here in my house, and when I bring the dog for a walk on a leash, I'm restricting the dog's natural urge to move, and the dog has to use more energy. And similarly, when I bring that dog on a walk on a day when the dog has more pep than I do, then the dog's making me use more energy. And he's actually explaining that uh, we move with less effort when we can move in freedom. And when we are all free to move in a way that's natural to us, we're more effective and we use less energy. And so we have more energy available to devote to other things. And I always like to find parallels. Obviously, I'm not equating a child to a dog by no means, but the fact that all of us are born with an urge to be free that's within us from the time we are born. And this is going to manifest itself in various ways. And of course, our niche is to look at how it affects young children, their development, and how they learn. Back to the article for a moment, he says that many of the changes and moves and choices that individuals make without having to think about it, we make those choices as if we inherited them from our ancestors who are long departed. We walk in the same way, more or less, at approximately the same pace. We breathe the same way, and we even shape wood fires the same way. So as individuals and groups, we exhibit preferences that propel us towards greater advancement. And Professor Bajan concludes that humans overall prefer life, not death, prefer security, not fear, and we prefer freedom. We prefer to be free. That's a really important link, I feel, with our Montessori philosophy. And you can learn more about that eminent scientist and his work via the link that Midori provides. So, of course, I'm always thrilled to read about the role that freedom plays in the development of the human being. And when I was choosing the title of this particular presentation, I gave careful consideration to that wording. Basic skills that every child wishes to develop. It's the child's wish for independence, for autonomy, for freedom that we're honoring during the next little while. And we're going to look to identify what these skills or what some of these skills might be. The child is born with the instinct to develop, and how we respond to this will surely be impactful in either a positive or a negative way. Of course, I had to bring up a Montessori quote to really begin this chapter of the voyage, and I found a very moving passage in her book, The Child, Society, and the World, in which Dr. Montessori draws particular attention to the idea of freedom. And she says, if the work comes from an inner source, it's much more intense. It's much more fruitful. The vision towards which the aim of work leads is so strong that one gets all one's energy from the work itself. Then fatigue disappears, sloth disappears, and man, human, child, multiplies his energies in an extraordinary way. That's all about what happens when the child really wants something. And that's what happens when the adult prepares herself or himself to do two things that are often very difficult. One of those is to trust the child, and the other is to trust the process. And this lack of trust is apparent in homes all over the world. It's apparent in schools all over the world, and it's even apparent in some Montessori schools. We're not going to focus our accusation on people who fail in that duty to support the needs of young children. But I think it's important to agree that as adults, it's very difficult to step back. It's difficult to refrain or delay. It's difficult to curb our own desire to intervene. And that's natural because, after all, we're experienced. We have made mistakes throughout our life. I mean, I'm continuing to do that. We've learned from them. We're careful. We're cautious. We're capable. And we're even faster. So, being faster, it's also possible that we are a little impatient. Now, I have worked in a lot of schools at this point, in two continents, Europe and North America. And when I engage in a conversation with parents at the beginning of a school year, there's always a little get together of some kind, a picnic or a party or maybe an information session. And at that kind of event, I have a precious opportunity to hear some of a parent's fears about a child's transition from the home environment to a school environment. And I also open myself to hearing about their hopes and their dreams for their child, because, of course, this is a little human that they clearly love with all their heart. So it's really useful to me to know, what are they hoping for? Well, over the years, I meet a huge, vast selection of people. Some of them, they're hoping that we have high quality modeling clay available in the classroom, because they're convinced perhaps that their child demonstrates a high interest in creative arts. And others are excited by the visual appeal of the concrete math materials. That's kind of always a very beautiful awakening for a visitor to a Montessori classroom, because most of us have learned mathematics in an abstract way. So I get a lot of excitement at the math shelf, and sometimes I hear from people how their neighbors have a 5-year-old who gets to do long multiplication with 4-digit numbers in a Montessori environment. And they ask me, when is that going to start? Because my child knows all his numbers. Now, when I hear this kind of conversation, I mellowed with age, I must say, because as a younger teacher, I used to think that encounters like that were proof that people devalued the basic skills that feature in the very first exercises that we introduce to children when they enter our Montessori classrooms. That was a long time ago. I think over the years, I have changed my perspective on this. And now I can see that some people do underappreciate them, but I've realized I can help families become informed about the beauty of the simple things, about the simple life skills, and as well as the fact that we humans actually want those skills way sooner than the adults who love us dearly typically want to trust us with that. So I was thinking about how I might speak to some people who find it strange to be in an environment that is a child's environment, because many parents are when they come in. They feel a little overwhelmed. They feel that they don't really fit in, physically and in every other way. And sometimes I find a different way to speak to those people. I say, for example, if you Google the top skills that employers look for, you'll find a list that is compatible with the goals of a Montessori education. Near the top of almost every list are the following: problem solving, self management, and organizational skills. And these are basic requirements in the world of adults, not only in a workplace, but even in our lives within the home. I mean, our homes can run easier when the adults who are caretakers of a family have these skills. So most of us wish we could be better organized, we could be more resourceful and efficient than we already are. Like, we are all still a work in progress. But these natural instincts to be organized, to be problem solvers, and to manage ourselves capably, they have been part of us from birth. I did look up the word instinct from the Latin instinctus, and it means to impel, to instigate. Instinct is an inborn tendency to behave in a way that's characteristic of a species. It's natural, it's not an acquired mode of response to stimuli. So let's consider our practical life curriculum to be a series of beautifully prepared stimuli. They're designed to refine those innate instincts. You see, as Madhuri said at the beginning, we're not going to set forth to teach the child these skills that will be useful for the rest of their lives. We're actually responding to a wish that is already present. And here is another Montessori quote, this time from her work to educate the human potential. She says, "The child must learn by his own individual authority and not to be questioned in his choice. Our teaching must only answer the mental needs of the child, never dictate them. He must have absolute freedom of choice, and then he requires nothing but repeated experiences." I always reassure myself with that when I look at maybe a 5-year-old who is very, very busy practicing how to tie a bow. And then I'm thinking of a very concerned parent who worries that they haven't started multiplication with 4-digit numbers, But this is where a child is at. at that time. This is what they choose to do, and they are doing it from an inner instinct. Some of the most basic desires of the young child relate to personal self-care. And if we take the time to watch children very closely, we can often see their facial muscles tense up when they sense that an adult is approaching them with the tissue, like they're going to wipe under their nose or clean their face. If we're looking at the child, we can see them almost flinch. This is a contrary gesture to a child's desire for freedom, because we're actually asking them to be let invade their personal space. And that kind of invasion suggests an imbalance within the relationship between adult and child, in which the child's role is potentially reinforced as dependent, weak, submissive, incompetent. Is this how we want our children to think of themselves? This is what happens when we love somebody so much, but their face just has that little thing there. We could get rid of that much faster. Is this how we want our children to think of themselves? To deprive a child of learning to care for themselves in this way is actually suppression of a child's basic instinct, which is to strive towards freedom and independence. Somebody who's striving for freedom and independence is not always comfortable with having people invade their personal space in that way. Now, blowing the nose is a very basic thing. It's one of a long list of exercises in personal care that young children love to do. And I am inviting you as participants in this get together to please use the comments to write in any suggestions that you have of personal care activities based on your own experiences in the home or classroom. In the current classroom where I spend my mornings, we have a very beautiful mirror, and many children really enjoy brushing their hair. And, we've had to adapt that. Sharing a hairbrush is not always the idea that we want. So they'll bring their own hairbrushes. We have a place for them to store that if necessary. And that can be a very satisfying experience for the very, very youngest of children, but any child in the children's house. Washing hands, brushing hair, brushing teeth. These are all activities that a child is wishing to be allowed to do by themselves. Independent dressing. All of these require patience on our part as adults, as well as a carefully prepared environment in which necessary items are easily within reach, supplies are always available, and are well organized. And in the case of independent dressing, it causes for a lot of prep on the part of the adult. For example, we need to have a system where we can rotate clothes according to season. Because if you allow somebody to go into their room and say, please dress yourself, and then they come out wearing something for 40-degree weather when the temperature is much lower, we have set ourselves up for failure. But of course, more importantly, we have potentially set the child up for disappointment and a very stressful start to the day. Uh, Certainly, being prepared can involve refining which clothes are available and rotating them. Also, having them organized in a way that a child can choose between 3 shirts, not 12 shirts, because that's too overwhelming. It's really important to check regularly that only clothing which fits the child properly is available. You know, I've often wondered when I see a child struggle to move in the classroom, if we could ever have a parent event where instead of discussing Montessori philosophy, we could have a very large wardrobe of clothes that are way too big or way too small and invite the adults to try those on and then move around the classroom. Because sometimes it's it's difficult to watch a child struggling to move in pants that are several inches too long, or the sleeves are too long and can't stay rolled up. And this is not to say there are situations in which people have limited resources. And so certain things have to occur. This is a very important point because not every family can accommodate things to be just the way they would like. But in a situation where choice is available to a family to provide suitable clothing, I think it's just a lack of attention that maybe leaves things in a chest of drawers that they're very nice to buy, but they won't fit until next winter, you know, then let's put them away because it's very frustrating to love something so much, but yet to find it so ill-fitting and not conducive to activity in the classroom. Children want to experience the power of dressing themselves, and it really does not matter if colors don't match, if patterns don't match, because a child isn't carrying the baggage of the adult world that cares about things like that. They just want to feel comfortable so they can move their bodies. From the age of approximately 18 months, children begin to attempt to experiment with clothing. And if they're guided patiently, using practical garments, and if they're allowed repeated experiences of dressing and undressing, it's true that a family's daily schedule is going to have to be changed in order to accommodate this. It might well mean careful planning in the morning time. Maybe you have the child select clothing for the following day in the evening time when it's time to go to bed, so that the excitement that accompanies choosing an outfit is part of an evening routine, and then maybe it saves a little time. Perhaps you prepare part of your breakfast ahead of time so that you can cut down on your own stress when a child's independent dressing takes longer than you were planning. And if you have paced yourself so that you can be available to guide a child who's trying so hard to dress themselves, you can be available not to do it for them, but to provide guidance. You're less likely to become impatient and irritable. And being impatient and irritable are not the best ways to start the day. By showing a child how to open and close zips, buttons, you're empowering them. And this is much more meaningful to a child than the rote memorization of numbers, which is so very important to many adults. My child knows all his numbers. So, what else is meaningful to a 3-year-old who's following a natural instinct to be independent?
We
Well,
yes,
yes,
we have Yasmin sharing her classroom experience where she says children love to wash their or their friends' plates after snack, and it is very empowering for them. She has also mentioned the children enjoy folding clothes as a part of their practical life activity. And not just the children, but it has also made the parents very happy because children are doing that at home as well.
yeah,
So,
it's always such a surprise to adults, I feel. When they catch these children at these little tasks in the house as if we have done something to transform the child. I feel this implication sometimes is there, whereas all we have done is just prepared things in a way that children would want. I really like to hear this about the snack and washing the dishes. That's such a social occasion as well, and can also cultivate a lot of connection between children in a community. It's very community oriented.
yes, yes. And while you were talking about wiping the nose, I
Yes,
have a nephew who's 7 months old.
yes,
And as you said, children become very stiff. They just do not want somebody coming, touching their body, or, somebody helping them when they don't want. And being a 7 month old, he knows that this is not somebody else's job. So he's having a running nose, and anybody in the family runs towards the baby with a napkin and trying to wipe the nose, he immediately moves his head away.
yes. And he's only 7 months. Yeah.
It's just 7 months. And, families, like I said earlier, that it is very difficult for families or parents, adults to understand the fact that this child needs the freedom, the space, and wants to try things on their own. Even if a 7 month old is not capable of wiping the nose by himself, but as you very rightly mentioned, bringing the child right in front of the mirror and show what you are trying to do. Tell the child in advance, and that's what we lack. So, while we are trying to help the child, we must inform the child, try to take the permission. Sometimes I must say this permission may not be the right word, but taking the consent from the child before we are trying to help the child is quite important. And a 7 month old is also very not expressive in terms of language, but definitely in terms of body language. He's clearly saying that I don't need your help unless and until you tell me why.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if we wouldn't like to be treated ourselves in that way, it's interesting that somehow we can dupe ourselves into thinking that, well, a child won't mind, we're just going to go ahead and do that. I feel it's invasive, I think.
Absolutely. So, Jose has raised his hand. Jose, you have something to share with us?
Yeah, thank you, Madhuri. I'm super fan, Susan. I follow her some time ago, and I'm fascinated by her work and her incredible projects. And it's always a joy to hear her with her wisdom and her calm approach, especially today. This is so unique. And I want emphasize, highlight the question of the freedom in the learning process, because I'm curious. This is not the $1 million question, of course, but is how to make compatible this pivotal question that is the independence of children in their own learning process, their instinct to follow, in a nowadays context that artificial intelligence is deciding for us, is not only deciding for us, it's deciding who will live and who will die, because the algorithms are running the war industry. I read an article today of the big techs, Google, etc. They are not anymore big techs. They are war techs, because they have contracts with the Pentagon to develop algorithms. Agentic is called agentic algorithms to decide what community will be destroyed and what community will survive. It's a culture of death and fear and destruction. And this is so related with the message of Maria Montessori about the importance of peace, to defend peace, and to defend life as a core values on the education. So for me, Maria Montessori is more actual than ever before, and is more important in this. This is a reflection. This is not a question for Susan, or this is only to share my awareness about this culture of death that is truly supported by the technology. And it was very interesting, the article that shared at the beginning was from an engineer. And my reflection is, how can we make compatible this importance of freedom and independence of children to decide about their own future with their context, that is a context more and more built and rooted in this destruction, death culture, where technology is only used in one single way, that is, get money to destroy other life human beings. And this is something that, in the perspective of the evolution that Susan mentioned, also is the first time in the history, in the human history, that we have the technology, like the nuclear weapons, and that we have the technology to avoid the responsibility to decide who will be alive and who not will be alive, because we have now machines to decide about this, or to decide terrible things like this one. So this is my reflection, and again, thank you, Susan, for your wisdom. Is much more needed than ever in our world, and thank you for your incredible everyday work.
Well, I think you need to tell people, Jose was also a student in a Montessori school. He had, yeah. So it's, it's an interesting. I wasn't lucky enough to have that kind of education, although perhaps culturally we did engage in some of these activities in school at an earlier age. I think, certainly going back in time, our early years, because there was no technology, of course, were so much more rooted in reality than perhaps the everyday lives of children nowadays. And that's, I think that has brought me to a point at this age that I really have begun to focus on the practical life aspects of the curriculum because they are so grounding. I think that they bring us to know ourselves at a very young age when we can feel autonomous, when we can feel, even in the small act of putting on our own socks, that we have the power to do this. We begin to develop a sense of our own identity in early childhood. And I think in some way, this brings us through our lives into, well, I'm considering this. Children who can develop basic everyday skills at an early age, who feel grounded, they grow in self-confidence. So the process of practicing these everyday skills, it enables them to be more attentive listeners in every setting that life brings their way. They're going to be more concentrated, more focused, typically. They can absorb the concept of a complete cycle of work, and they become competent organizers and creative thinkers, because when the water spills onto the table, not into the glass, or when both of your legs go down the same leg of your pants, and your mom doesn't come to help you fix it because she encourages you, what's your plan? How can you work this? They grow in resourcefulness and optimism, something that we will need moving forward in the world, for sure. The world is at a stage at the moment that it needs a lot of optimism. It needs a lot of grounded people who are resourceful in a positive way. Perhaps, I can feel that these skills formed in early childhood will frame how a child approaches learning anything. They're even very important to character development, I feel, because when you feel confident, you dressed yourself and you feel confident and you're only 3 or 4 years old, you have a very strong adherence to your own opinions and ideas, and you're not going to be so easily impressed or swayed because you're a secure human being. And I think that's also going to be increasingly important moving into the future. I think that practical, very simple skills can help to shape a child's mindset, and they can acknowledge a desire to feel respected, and they can benefit not just children in a Montessori classroom, but every child in the world. You don't need to go to a Montessori school to have an entire practical life experience in your home, regardless of your circumstances, because this curriculum will reflect every culture that every economic status. It can reflect every child's reality. I guess that's a good moment to segue into the Small Hands Project. My belief in the power of basic skills has inspired me to develop what is actually a collaborative project. It's not my project, it's the project of a growing number of people. And it's called the Small Hands Project, designed to be an evolving database of everyday skills that a young child would be interested in developing. And that website, I know Maturi will give you the link in the comments. It's www.smallhandsproject.org. We are also on Instagram. I believe it's small.hands.project. It's designed to be multilingual because we want to broaden its potential access to as many people as possible. There are so many children in the world who don't have access to go to any kind of school, not even a Montessori school. They might not get to school in the next 5 or 6 years of their lives. So how are these children going to develop a strong sense of who they are? Yeah. Currently, we're hosting information about the benefits of life skills for young children in English, Arabic, Vietnamese, Hindi, Spanish, French. We've translations coming in Catalan, German, Kurdish, Croatian, Farsi, other languages. We welcome any volunteers who have experience with translations. You don't have to be a Montessori educator. The documents are very simple. And our goal is to broaden access to information about the fact that this is who children are. Children are ready. Children have this instinct. They want to be free. They want to be independent thinkers. They don't want to be manipulated by others. They want to grow and to extend themselves. And I would just like to say, as a closing comment, at any stage of life, how we approach learning actually impacts what we learn. It impacts what we internalize. It impacts to what level we can comprehend and build on the material that we're presented with. That affects us when we're 3 or my age, how we approach learning. And so it's therefore crucial that we can experience internal motivation at a very young age, because it's already there. The fire is already lit, and basic life skills enable children to do just that. Madhuri, thank you so much for letting me give that big long spiel. Madhuri, by the way, is a collaborator on this beautiful project and has given much of her time and expertise to providing translations. And I do want to thank you so much for that, Madhuri. This, like a Montessori work, is collaborative, not competitive, just like in the classroom. And through the good energy of many volunteers, we hope to really broaden this message of the power of basic skills that we know every child is desperately wishing to have.
Absolutely. And Susan, thank you. Thank you for this lovely session. Every time I think of what new can we learn in Montessori, because we do so many trainings, we attend so many webinars, we read so many books, and yet whenever I hear you, there is something new to learn. Absolutely, you are incredible in terms of your experience, the insights that you have, the way you see things. It's so deep. So the first example, with the help of the direct science paper, beautiful. And what you just said, it's how we approach the learning is what we are, right? I think it also leads us to the fact, the two things initially when you were talking about the two things that an adult should have, and then we can support the children, is trust in the child and trust in the process. I think it's only possible when we approach towards learning in a way where we trust the process and trust the child, isn't it? So thank you for this beautiful and insightful session. But I have a question. So we are talking about the role of the adult over here, and nowadays in many schools, wherever I visit, I see that parents are coming. Somehow, the concept of advocating for the child has become too, overboard, where now
Yes.
parents are overprotecting the child,
Yes.
and they are coming, instead of coming and advocating the child for the right things, they are coming and defending the child sometimes, or complaining on behalf of the child. And I have also heard these comments by parents saying, perhaps Montessori is not the right place for my child. Do you really think that Montessori is not a place for any child? Because we all know that Montessori is a way of life, right? And a way of life cannot be different for any person. It is going to be the same, isn't it? So
Yes.
how to approach and how to deal with such parents, or make them understand the importance of what we are doing, or how to help their children so that it is not, overprotection, and giving them enough space. As you said, if we put a leash around a dog's neck, we are not giving the dog enough freedom. I think somehow overprotection is also leash on a child's neck, right? So how
I,
to help such parents understand this?
I you know, it's like I say, as you stay longer and longer along this path, you encounter many situations, all of which are very educational, and I speak from the adult's perspective. Um, I did hear, and it made me think, because the person said to me in the course of a conversation, we were desperately trying to do just what you were describing. How can we make somebody realize, or how can we help somebody understand, or how, I can't quite remember right now, but this was our topic, and this person uh, then invited a third party to join us, and that person said something I'd never thought about. They said, well, Montessori's approach can suit every child, but it might not suit every family. Because really, if the family's culture cannot really expand its lifestyle to include or complement what we're doing, it can be problematic. And so the culture of the family is very important, I feel. I visited the very first Casa de Bambini in Rome a couple of years ago. And then I got so into this because I was standing in the courtyard and looking around at this building and trying to go back in time and picture this happening. And I started to read a lot more about how this environment was run as an organization. And the uh, one of the clauses in the agreement between a family and the school was that a parent had to come 2 times every week for a meeting. And so we couldn't really ask this of people nowadays. There is just simply no time, even though we have so many machines and gadgets that people didn't have then. We seem to have less time. So that is unrealistic. But I guess what I began to think about was, well, in this way, the people who did commit to coming 2 times per week to speak with Dr. Montessori or the people who were assisting her in that first classroom, they had a commitment and they were interested because they knew they could all benefit. Not only could the child benefit, but they as a family could benefit. And I feel that nowadays people are attracted to programs of all kinds, not just Montessori programs, for so many reasons that sometimes we can't even imagine. They're not maybe the reasons we think they should be attracted. And so sometimes in this case, when we have to try too hard to convince somebody, I think this is indicative of the fact that we must be able to meet in the middle. You know, we're not looking for converts. We're not looking to start a sect. We're not looking, but we certainly have to find common ground. And when that is not really apparent, then perhaps our lifestyle that we're talking about here is not really going to be beneficial for every family as they now live. Does that answer your question? Or
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
I completely agree with you. Even now, there are parents who are invested and really would love to understand what is happening in the school environment so that they can contribute at home in a way that complements the learning in school. But
Yeah.
now in today's time, we have handful of such parents who are so invested. Most parents, wherever I am going and visiting schools, I'm observing many families are sending their children because they want time off from spending with the child and engaging the child. And they want their me time is why they want to send their children in a school. Now, it's become more of how much pocket capacity I have. So I'm putting my child in a certain school and not really because I'm too invested in my child's learning. And
Yes.
and it is disappointing, as you said, in such cases, either we have to come up to a common ground or perhaps those families are not fit for a Montessori environment. But
Can
yeah,
I add something?
yes, Bena, sure.
About the previous question that you had about, parents and how they are really, having some issues or talking on behalf of the child. So one of my trainers, Sam, who's from Cape Town, she kind of she suggested this. So one of the parents who came to her really insisted that their child was let to have a cold drink to school for lunch every day. And then it was also against the school policy because, of course, cold drink and for a child or so I think she has this one of the values that she has in school is to have respect for everyone, right? So be it the teachers, be it the child, be it the parents. So she said that one thing that us teachers or the admin or the founder do is, not really lose their cool when it comes to parents or write like long emails or have these meetings and then constantly call parents for meetings and then they don't just show up. So just basically having this one statement that when the child is at school, the child is not allowed to have cold drink. But when the child is in your home, you're free to do whatever you want to. So she said, I just said this one sentence, and then the parents never really bothered to um, have this whole conversation again. So she said it took me many months to really come up with this one simple sentence. But then she said that she just used it ever since. And then she was like, be it any situation, not only the child carrying something. So she also had a certain situation where a child had a cheese allergy, and suddenly a few months in, the allergy was like not there. And anything of that sort. And then she just uses this one simple statement. And then if they're not comfortable, and like Susan said, then maybe it is not for that. Montessori is not for that family. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwena. Thank you. That was really lovely. Yeah, it does work that way. Yes. So basically, what your trainer told you was setting boundaries and limits also for the families and not just for the child. Yeah, that's a beautiful approach to actually. Yeah, yeah,
And what I've actually also faced is that parents try to have these conversations when they're dropping their kids or when they're picking them up. And then as a teacher or as an adult in the classroom, to sit and argue in front of the argue with the parent in front of the child is also a big problem, right? Because you have to say no in a very nice, subtle way. Um, and then the child's also looking up to you and listening to what you're trying to say. So these, I think, small bits also affect the child a lot.
yeah, absolutely. Isn't it, Susan? Because um, when we are interacting with the parents' trust will decide whether the child is going to trust us or not, right? So, of course, if we are not having a positive, optimistic conversation with the parents, it is going to impact our work with the child as well, because what parents are discussing about us at home or how their body language is around us will decide how the child is going to treat us, or have that kind of belief in us or not, right? So
I fully agree. Yes. And I think it never really, it can only confuse a child to have mixed messaging. I think a child feels secure when they see that there is some level of alignment between the adults in the home and the adults in the school. Perhaps we don't have to be identical in our approach, but that we present a similar message to the child. I think that's reassuring. So to see a contrast in opinions or views is never very helpful for a child to see openly. Of course, we can disagree in our own space as adults, but to have a child sense that, I think, is never a good feeling for a child.
yeah, totally. It's just like at home, if both the parents are not on same page, the child is pretty smart to take advantage of the situation and go and get their things done, whatever they want, isn't it? It's the same way with school environment and the home environment, the parents and the adults at school. If we are not on same page, of course, like you said, we may not say the same things, we may not use the same terminology, but having on being on same page is the key to ensure that the child is given a right environment, a positive environment to grow and to develop, right?
Yes.
Even the teachers, say two teachers in one classroom. So I work with elementary children. So even if us two teachers are not on the same page, elementary kids are smart enough to know what works with which teacher. So someone might agree with some certain thing and someone might not. So they judge that too well. We have to be like 10 steps ahead all the time.
Yeah, totally, totally. Very true. So, we are running out of time. We may take one question or anything that you have, any experience you would like to share, and then we'll end for today. Anybody who wants to share something?
I would just like to ask about uh, the Small Hands project. I did get like a minute to go through it. So, will you guys be adding more and more presentations as you go in? And
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And
So
is it
right, it's growing, but we actually have a lot more material than we have been able to keep up with posting, if you know what I mean. So we are rolling out the website on a gradual basis, and we already have a very large stockpile of ideas, many presentations, some advice, some ideas for creating classroom materials for people perhaps who do not have the luxury of ordering from a catalog, how we might create things from nature, recycled objects. We have lots of ideas on how we can further expand. The whole premise is that this began as a kernel idea, but can grow to meet the needs of the community that wishes to use it. And it's very important to me that not only can any child in a suburban middle class family benefit, or somebody with a lot more access to opportunity, but people who are living in refugee camps can also avail of this. Last week, I did a workshop with the team in Kurdistan, and they're very appreciative of these ideas because many people, regardless of where they live in the world, are still finding some of Montessori's ideas as being very new to them. We're not about converting the world to Montessori philosophy. I don't think she even viewed it herself in that way. She was merely presenting to us, I like the quotation that she sometimes used, don't look to me, look where I'm pointing. Like she's always bringing this back to the child, and we are hoping to highlight awareness of what children want, wish for, and need. Truly want, not toys that have a very short shelf life, but the very basic needs that make children grow in a very secure way in a unfortunately unstable world at this time. This is more important than ever, I feel. And of course, I'd be so happy if anybody out there wants to jump on board. I always accept volunteers who are good with technology and also languages, or also creative ideas. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thank you so much.
Sorry, one more thing. Will you be expanding it to say primary children, and then like would you be, say, if I have to volunteer, I know this is for infants, but then it could also benefit these practical skills, like, moving on with as they grow older and develop the skills.
Yes, it has potential to encompass. Right now, we're focusing on children from 3 to 6, but we have the ability to expand to include information for children from birth to 3 and also from 6 to beyond. Again, everything takes time, and we're working really hard to keep everything moving. But please do take a look. And
Yes.
also, there's feedback. You can let us know what you think. We welcome all sorts of ideas.
Yes, thank you. I'll connect with Madhuri maybe for
Sure.
this voluntary position in case I can be of any help. I am very interested. Thank you. Thank you, Madhuri. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. I think Jairus.
Jairus, yes. Oh no, actually my question was similar. If we can expand the Small Hands project to the other age groups, not just it's for just for 3 to 6, right? Right now?
Right now that was our starting point.
Yes.
But we don't have boundaries on what we can do with this, because we will certainly be responsive to the interest that's given in terms of who is available to help us, and also who is looking for this kind of help. So yes, if I'm hearing from you, there's interest in other age groups, then of course this is absolutely something that's likely to happen as we continue to grow.
All right. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we need this kind of work in every age group, though, Susan. So
Yes.
I think we haven't completed the 3 to 6 yet, but
It's never complete. You're right. It's we're moving along. I have some people who are trained at the 0 to 3 level who are happy to help out with the beginnings, but like we cannot be full in terms of any offer of help. You should know that you would be part of a team. We are a collaboration. So, for example, in terms of translators, we don't just have one person that I send all of the documents to and they have to work on them all. We have a team of people who are comfortable translating from English to Arabic. Some of them have worked in education. Some of them are tour guides up in the mountains and have never heard of Montessori, but they're really committed to helping children in their community. And so it's really, if you demonstrate any interest in trying to work along some of this, perhaps you have creative projects that you're interested in creating a document and it might be compatible with something we can use. There is no limit as yet as to what we're looking for. We want this to be a continual work in progress, like we look on ourselves, the human being. We are ourselves a work in progress, and so is this beautiful project. And through it, we want to keep Montessori's original message very close to our heart, that this is for every child. Some children will never have access to the beautiful classrooms that some of us are lucky enough to work in, but there are certainly key parts of a Montessori curriculum that can be adapted in the most amazing circumstances.
absolutely. Thank you for this noble initiative, Susan. And including people from world over, and not just Montessorians, but people from different fields as well. Because everybody, I think, seeks for that, inner inner urge to somehow I feel everybody has this inner urge to contribute to the society, and your project is actually helping people satiate that in drive, the inner drive. So thank you so much to start this. And yeah, please get in touch with me and I will get you in touch with Susan as well. So as and when we have more requirements, I'm sure Susan will come out with many.
I have lots of jobs for anyone who's interested in help.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll work together. And I think we need to have this kind of collaborative community to make this world a better place. And especially with the time that we are living right now, I think more of people like us are required to help and make that change. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining in today. It was a wonderful event, and yes, we will get in touch again. So have a great weekend, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Susan. You have a
good night,
and good luck for the Small Hands project. I just wish you get many more volunteers so that this becomes a success worldwide.
Great. Thanks so much for the positive energy. Thank you.